Hey there and welcome. My name is Carlos Beres and let's start talking about what has been going on in the indie tabletop RPG scene. And as always, I'm not being sponsored by anyone mentioned here unless explicitly mentioned otherwise. And you can find all the links in the description as well as the properly timestamps. Also, today we talk with Spencer Campbell, an indie creator from Chicago. You can jump directly to the interview if you want to, although I do not encourage you to it, but it will be in the description. Okay, this week we start bringing to your attention two charity bundles, one that will go on until the end of the month, since we are in the queer month. This one is the TTRPG charity bundle for trans support. TTRPG from the tabletop RPG scene, and you can get 75 tabletop RPGs or titles from the scene for 95% off. They are midway their funding goal at least, and I highly encourage you to check them out. There are so many good titles and you are paying a bargain. The next one is the charity bundle, and you have just a couple of hours left to back it, counting from the time that I am publishing the video. This is the indie bundle for Palestinian Aid, in which you can get more than 1,000 titles for as less as $5. I contributed with 2 games from myself, but either way, I would say for you to check them out. Bear in mind that it's not just tabletop RPG games, not like the previous bundle. This one are indie games in general, because itch.io is the biggest platform for indie games. And they are games not just for tabletop, but you have some electronic games. So you still get a very good amount of games for as low as $5, and either way it is a very nice opportunity and important cause, and I really think that you should support them. About good initiatives, there's a very nice one between some indie designers, indie creators in general, which I believe that recently got reignited perhaps by Nick Bates, okay, the creator of, among other things, is stealing the throne. The initiative is called Hype Swap, because you are hyping games and you are swapping games, okay? So basically it consists of 2 indie creators exchanging games, so they are swapping games. Each one reads or evaluates the games from the other one and then hype them up in Twitter. So you are swapping games and hyping them up. That's why it's Hype Swap. For me, it is a win-win. It's actually more than a win-win situation, because you are getting a new game for your library. You are having someone to check out your game, because it's actually a designer checking out your game. Perhaps it should be one more, but and then they are hyping up your game. So at least it's a win-win squared, perhaps even more than that. So check it out. It is a very good initiative, and you can perhaps organize something that is not centrally coordinated by them. It's not a problem. So it's just to put the indie games out there and have more people to check them out. So okay, so to bring more attention to the indie tabletop games. And there is an interesting competition going on for Forbidden Psalm. It is a tabletop war game, Forbidden Psalm, so it's not exactly tabletop RPG, but it is inspired and compatible with Mork Borg. You know, the Metal and More Than Once mentioned here game, you know the Mork Borg game, okay? It's a competition to create another monster for this 28mm miniature agnostic game. So Forbidden Psalm is a miniature agnostic game that it's not a RPG, but is a war game that is compatible and based on Mork Borg. So it is part of the indie tabletop RPG scene in a way. You have until July 16th to do so, to create this new monster, and further instructions and rules can be found on the following link in the description as always, okay? The winner will also receive a copy of Forbidden Zone expansion. And why do I mean and mention that? It's because Forbidden Zone is a very difficult game to put your hands on a physical copy. The hardback and softcover, they are sold out like that. And since we're talking about it, we have some Forbidden Zone restock on Exalted Funeral, the official publisher of the game, and I suggest that you just go quickly and check them out before it is out of stock again, and get your physical copy if you want to. It's a way to get you this getaway game from tabletop RPG into wargame, or if you are into indie tabletop wargames, to get into indie tabletop RPGs. And talking about stocking in Exalted Funerals, we have the Kalunga Plateau. This is a game by Tortelloni, Gustavo Tortelloni, also known as Pitch Black Lair. He is a Brazilian tabletop RPG creator, so a mention to the RPG Latam community, RPG Latin American community, and himself as a member of the RPG Latam community. I want to mention that Exalted Funerals is making so much effort actually to bring people from these not as much represented communities into the game. I know that they published some stuff with Diogo Nogueira, they are now publishing with Tortelloni, and I hope that it will get to better contributions in the future, and even more actually. The title is now available for a physical version from Exalted Funerals, and it's a zine for the OSE, so Old School Essentials, but it can easily be used with other OSR titles. So Old School Renaissance, you can probably adapt it with a lot of other titles. It works as a toolkit in a way. So you make this Lost Plateau of your world where you have some different tribes and monsters, and they inhabit this place, this situation, this location. And it has some new spells, it has some new creatures, it has some new, or actually plenty of tables. This kind of stuff that you can never get enough of, because actually we can always use new spells, creatures, tables, and whatever else, okay? And now, just to continue to tickle your fancy or your consumer brain, this is when I mentioned Station Hunt. It is currently available as pay what you want in each, and although I still encourage you to pay the huge amount of $2 for having this game. And it is a game that put the players, or actually the player itself, in a position to try and survive an isolation. I'd say mostly the game is developed thinking about space station, but isolation is something that we are more than aware of. But this is the point. The game itself is developed to be played with you going through your house, home, office, and use it as part of it all. You just going through your day and making this all to make sense with your day in a space station. Okay? So this is a nice idea to put two and two together. And the next one is a bundle by Chris Bissette, in which they are having a sale in this bundle that you can save 35% from the bundle. 35% because they are making, actually they are celebrating their 35th anniversary. So they are making 35 years old. And we are talking about the developer of The Wretched, and more than that, he is one of the main ones for the SRD. Tons of 5e productions, some of them are in the Dungeon Masters Guild, but not all of them. They are also the creators of Under the Floorboards, one of my favorite games that I never played, and most recently They are the creators of one Kickstarter adventure for Mortborg that was publicly, amazingly celebrated and supported. So just check the bundle. You can get so much value with their idea of celebrating their 35th anniversary and birthday, okay? Before the promised interview, I want to make clear actually that tomorrow morning in Europe I will be live with Goblin Squire on Twitch. It will be 10 o'clock BST, British Standard Time, 11 o'clock CEST, Central European Standard Time. So it is 10 a.m. in UK, 11 a.m. in Europe, most of Central Europe actually. And we will be talking about indie games. How I got into indie games, why do I enjoy them, and whatever questions about indie games that they can bring on. I would highly appreciate if you could collaborate, if you could be there with the chat, because it's much more fun to have a live conversation with a very responsive chat. So I very much encourage you to check it out. The link will be in the description with the channel. So help us out and let's talk about the indie games and the indie scene. And we will be talking about more about Lumen later on, but I suggest that you check the Lumen Jam that is going on, and which actually you are encouraged to create a game or a material for a game using the Lumen SRD. You will have more description during the interview. So without further ado, you have our interview with Spencer Campbell. So, okay, so since I mentioned before, we are now here with Spencer Campbell. He's an indie designer. He also had some other experiences with making videos, some streams as well. So why don't you introduce yourself, Spencer?
Sure. So I'm Spencer Campbell. I'm a RPG designer slash psychologist. So like was mentioned, I do some videos, I do some design. I think folks who are familiar with my design are probably familiar with games like Slayers or the Lumen system, which recently came out. I also do some design streams, and I had a series of videos on YouTube on the psychology of games, where I combined my day job of psychology with my night job of game design.
Yeah, and it's a very good series that it focuses on analyzing some games, I guess, and how they tie with other aspects of the psychology of it. And how do you think that your background in psychology affects your designs, your games then?
Yeah, so I'm what's called a cognitive psychologist. So I think when most people hear psychology or psychologist, they think of a clinician or a counselor or a therapist. And I'm not in that area at all of psychology. I'm in the area, I do research on things like decision making, problem solving, creativity. And when you hear all of those things, hopefully it reminds you of games, because that's what we do in a lot of our games. So I have background in the theory of how those things it should theoretically work in the mind, in the brain. So I try and use some of that in informing how I design my games, or how I just even treat how I play other people's games, knowing what I know about some of those areas.
Yeah, nice. And you mentioned before that you developed Lumen, which is kind of an SRD or a system to designing other systems. So how was this experience different from your point of view from designing games themselves, actually?
Yeah, so the SRD was interesting because it came after I made a game that used that system. So I made a game, and then I tried to shred away all of the setting and stuff that was specific to that game itself, and turned it into an abstract idea to create this SRD for other people. So it was one of those things where I had already sort of, I don't want to say accidentally made the system, but I had sort of just kind of, this system had been built in small pieces over a period of time. I had a thing, and then I realized, oh, I could strip away all of the paint. I could take away all of the flavor, and there's still a mechanical system underneath that other people could use. For me, it was really fun because, and I hope people see that in the SRD, I didn't write it like a technical document. I know a lot of SRDs out there are very, very straightforward, and they're very much like, you can copy and paste this text in and your game will work. And that really won't work with the Lumen SRD. There's not a lot to copy and paste in there. It's really like half a conversation with me and half like my game design philosophy. And then there is some mechanics in there that you can use as well.
Yeah, so it is more informing what you were aiming at it than actually just putting a cake recipe there and then you can follow through.
Exactly. Like, I think if I really did like boil it down to like a mechanical document, it would be much shorter, but instead it is a lot of me kind of talking about why I do things the way I do in games, why the rules are designed the way that they are, and then with a lot of permission for you to ignore a lot of the stuff in the book as well, because I want folks to be able to just kind of see it as a toolkit rather than a recipe that they must follow. Instead, it's just a bunch of tools that they can use in whatever way they want.
Oh, okay. And the system that you designed before it was light then. That's why you go with Lumen for the name as well.
Exactly. So light came first, and then I'm using this system for Nova, my upcoming game. So they're both in the realm of bright stars or light, and so that's where Lumen gets its name then.
Yeah, and it differentiates a bit from the previous one that was Slayers, that was less light, more dark, I guess, because it's an infinite city or something like that.
Yes. So yeah. Slayers is this infinite city monster hunting game and like a cursed city. It's a totally different take on things, a very different mechanical structure in that one was really informed by my love of board games, because a lot of board games lean into this idea of asymmetrical gameplay where players play with sort of different rules depending on what faction or team you're playing as. And I love that about board games, and I don't see that happen as much in role-playing games. So that's where Slayers came from, is me wanting to take my board game obsession and bring it into the RPG world.
And since you mentioned that now Nova will follow a little bit with the ideas of Lumen, can you talk more about Nova, that it's coming to Kickstarter? I guess the moment that this video goes live, it will be already live. So it's live the 8th, I guess?
Yes.
Okay, so talk about Nova. I guess you are pretty excited about that.
I'm so excited about Nova. So Nova is it's a game that takes place in a setting that my best friend and I developed 3 years ago, where we just kind of sat down and had a lot of fun developing a setting, but we never ended up making a game out of it. And I had this Lumen system, and I wanted to put it into a new setting. And here's the basic pitch: is the sun explodes, and that's a bad thing for us. And in that explosion, shards of sunlight actually slam into the Earth's surface. And what these create then is we have this perpetual night above us, but there's these huge shards of warmth and light and, in theory, energy, because we can tap the energy of the sun. And so it's a sort of post-apocalyptic world where humanity is rebuilding around these huge shards of light, and we've created these exosuits, these like mechs that people get into that are powered by these solar shards that go out into the dark to try and explore the old ruins of Earth, finding technology and information that we lost. And there's a lot of horrible, mean monsters and baddies out in the dark. And so it's a lot of going out there, a lot of combat fighting those things, and then investigating these dangerous places and coming back and trying to rebuild humanity.
Yeah, because I believe it is very action focused. Like it is supposed to be like the action games or action movies as well that we watch and that we consume, but with that post-apocalyptic idea. And you also put already out a quick start with that, with I guess 15 pages or something like that, with the basic of the rules. So what can people expect more in the campaign?
Yeah, so it is definitely an action focused game. It's a combat focused game because the Lumen system is inspired by some of my favorite video game genres like the looter shooters, the action RPGs and things like that. So the quick start has 4 of the 6 classes, the different exosuits that are called sparks. They're in that book, and the final book is going to have 2 more of those sparks. So there'll be 6 classes in the book. There's going to be tons of enemies, lots of enemy factions. The quick start is I'm not a graphic designer or an artist, so it is very minimal in its style and approach. I have a phenomenal team that are putting together some really great art, some great layout, so that ultimately the book is going to look fantastic. The other thing that I'm excited about that's not in the quick start is the systems and tools for creating missions and advancing the characters. Because right now they're just sort of some pre-built, pre-generated characters in the quick start, just so that you can go play it and see if you like the idea of the game. But there's a lot of how I describe it. In this game, you're already essentially max level. And so it's more focusing on creating builds for your characters. Like at the end of an MMO, you're trying to get the right equipment to get a right build for your character rather than starting at level 1 and then getting up to level 20. We're already at level 20. So let's feel powerful and make ourselves feel specialized in that power.
Oh yeah, it brings that idea from action games actually, that you are already good at what you are doing. You are not like beginning from zero and going from there. So you also had an actual play of the game not that long ago. So did it play like you expected, or how was the experience?
It was so much fun. I played it with the +1 EXP crew with Tony and some friends, and it was a lot of fun. It, you know, I've played it in some small closed room play tests where we just tested combat just to make sure that it worked, but it was cool to go then put it together into a full one shot. My favorite things about the one shot was that the players immediately started figuring out the cool combos of their powers of sparks, so they would kind of like queue each other up, which is what I want to see. Like that's what you get in a good video game or MMO or something like that, where the players, the classes are sort of like specializing and they kind of like combo off of one another to do these devastating, amazing things. And that's what the players were doing in the one shot, which was really cool. And if I'm being honest, one of my other favorite things that I have shifted as a player of role-playing games away from the 4-hour session, because I just don't have time to do the 4 hours. And it's just hard for me, hard to schedule a time to sit down and play anyways, especially 4 hours. And so a good Nova session can be finished in an hour and a half or 2 hours, and that's how long our actual play took. And that for me is sort of like that sweet spot for what I can hit in games. So again, it's leaning into those video games where you're thrown right into the action right away. You're just gonna feel like a really powerful mech for like 60 to 90 minutes, have a lot of fun, and so the actual play really highlighted that. So I was really happy with that.
Yeah, because I saw that it was just like a little bit more than 1 hour, and I was usually, when you think about role-playing games, just at like 3 to 4 hours a session, and it's tough to get it all around. So it's nice to have these games that you still can play if you have a short amount of time. And it's like a lot of MMOs, you just go there, play one mission, and that's it. You have done it. So also the idea of the sparks, like what exactly are the sparks? Is each one of the characters, and you said now you have 6 classes total. So what exactly do they change between them?
So the sparks are supposed to represent sort of like the key classes that you might see in a game. So you've got the pyre class, for example, which is maybe your typical like fighter equivalent that you would find, or your DPS equivalent that you would find in a lot of games, where they deal a lot of kind of like single target damage. They can dash around the field very quickly. You've got your Scorch, which is kind of like a caster. There's no magic technically going on because these are exosuits. It's all technology, but it's such advanced technology that it kind of feels a little magical with what they can do. And this, you know, so this class is doing a lot of like casting fire, erupting fire out of the ground from all over the place. So all of these sparks are meant to sort of represent some of the kind of key classes that you would want to see in a game, but with some variations to them. So for example, you usually would expect to have like a support class of some kind in these sorts of things. But in Lumen, the characters are already so powerful that you don't really need like a dedicated healer or anything like that. And so the support class in Nova, for example, is more about marking enemies so that everybody can kind of ping off of those marks in fun and unique ways. Kind of similar to what we see in some like the 4E classes back in like previous editions of Dungeons and Dragons, which were much more that like tactical combat thinking sort of approach. So these sparks are, you know, when I was first designing that, I was definitely trying to think of like the main classes that you would expect in a party comp. And then my artist, Eddie York, sent me all these amazing silhouettes of concept art. And I've started to actually kind of twist my design where rather than me going, here are the classes, draw sparks art that works with that, I'm kind of just looking at the art that he's done and going, what would this spark do? And sort of using that as a generation as well. So it's been really fun to sort of reverse the direction of that design, just because Eddie is so inspiring with his art that I'm getting like tons of new ideas that I didn't originally anticipate as a result.
Yeah, I love when you have this reverse process kind of thing. Like you have an art and you go from there to design what you have all around. And I think that it's a very good way to, as you said, change a little bit the focus that you have, because usually when you are creating, you just have a blank sheet, your ideas, and then you have to fill that. When you have this other spark, in a way, it helps to inform your decision. And the game, it plays with D6s, I guess. Only D6s or
Yeah, it's just a D6 system. So it's just pools of D6, and there's no like variable damage where you're rolling dice to determine damage or anything like that. So I tried to keep it as streamlined as possible. So you don't need to go get a bunch of different dice or anything like that. D6 are one of those things that even if you're not a big role-playing game fan, you could probably open like an old Monopoly box and grab some six-sided dice out of that. So I wanted to keep it, the focus of Lumen is to make it fast and approachable for as many people as possible.
Yeah. And the campaign, it starts on the 8th of June. And do you have an idea how much time it will be lasting, actually?
Yeah, it will end on July 3rd. So it's not exactly a full month of time. So, and I believe July 3rd is a Saturday. So that it's somewhere between 3 and 4 weeks long for the campaign itself.
Oh, nice. And I saw that there was already more than 500 people registered to check it out. So, I mean, the art so far is already looking great. And having that many people, I believe that everyone is excited to see it, but you were even more excited to. I do not know if it's like the first project that you are kickstarting or how.
This will be my 4th project on Kickstarter. Yeah, my 4th project. So I did 3 last year. I did my first game ever, which was Score, my crime heist game. Then I did Slayers last summer and a supplement for Slayers in the fall. And so this is my first Kickstarter of this year. And I'm blown away with the 500 people that are following it already. I'm so excited that people are excited about the game. I think it's a huge testament to Eddie for doing amazing art that draws people's attention, and to Jam, who is doing the layout. I've shown some of her spreads of layout that she's doing as well. And so it's one of those things where like the premise I think is cool, but it's so much easier to show that premise when you've got this amazing layout and art to sort of back it up. So I can't wait to actually fully share it with everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing like how you imagine it, but usually the art also, it helps to inform people what they can expect from the whole game. And even more when you are talking about mechas and this kind of exoskeletons, it is something that usually people are very passionate about. So I do believe that it strikes the people right. So and the idea for the group is like is one GM and four to six players, or what would you say that it's the best size in a way?
I personally, as when I'm GMing, I like 3 players. That's just my personal sweet spot. I know everybody has their different preferences. That works best for me to move the spotlight around enough so that everybody is not waiting super long. You can play with up to 6 with this because there's 6 sparks, and there is the benefit of the Lumen system is very quick. Your turns don't take very long at all. It's not like a lot of other combat focused games where a person's turn can take like 5 minutes or more as they're contemplating all of their options and everything. Your turns are over like in seconds to a minute. So even if you had 6 players, it's moving very quickly, especially given the fact that all the enemies don't have their own individual turns as well. So combat is this very fast, sort of fluid thing. And as a result, you could play with 6, and I don't think it would feel slow for those players, which is always my biggest hesitation. When you get a big table, you're gonna have somebody who's sitting there waiting 20 minutes for their chance to get to do something, and that's always hard to deal with.
I mean, it's not uncommon for a whole 3 to 4 hour session be one combat in some games. So I would expect that with the focus in this action-based and combat on Nova, it's kind of interesting to see that you went to quick resolutions. Like as you mentioned, you do not even roll for damage. So it's to try and get this speed up, I guess.
Yeah, I love combat in games, obviously, because the Lumen system is inspired by a lot of games that are about going around and doing really cool combat. And I've always struggled with role-playing games to bring satisfying combat to the table, because it's either very crunchy and takes a long time to do, or it's like too loose, too narrative, and then I have a really hard time understanding what's going on. If there's like some games just they don't put as much structure in it, and that's fine because that's the style of that particular game. But for me, I wanted somewhere that kind of sat in between those two things, where you were loose in how you got to approach combat, so it was still more like narratively focused, but there's some crunch to it, a little bit of rules, but not too much that it's going to take you 5-10 minutes to do your turn.
Yeah, that sounds right. That you then can make it quick for that everyone can do something cool, because actually when we are playing, and even more if we are playing something like with this focus on combat and action, we want to do something cool. I mean, right. You have a mecha, you have almost magic like technology. You want to make something cool.
And that's an important part about Nova, is that the classes don't have weapons for their attacks or everything. They just have this list of powers that their mechs are just capable of doing. And in Nova, this particular version of a Lumen game, there's no rolling to use those powers. You just do them, which I think is important. If the game is about feeling cool, when it's your turn, you get to do a cool thing, guaranteed. It's not one of those things where you're ready to like cast a really awesome spell or swing your really legendary sword and then you roll and you miss, because that's just so devastating. These are highly technologically advanced, amazing mecha suits. So of course they're going to be really awesome at combat. They're going to do cool stuff. And so that's in combat, it's really truly about figuring out how you want to look cool. What's maybe the tactically best way of looking cool, but you're going to look cool on your turn.
Yeah, and you would mention that in the full game there will be a lot of enemies. Can you give us a preview of what kind of enemies can we expect?
Yeah, so we've got these cities with these sun shards in them, and then everything outside of those cities is a region called the Dusk. And the further away you get from the sun, the more dangerous things get. So you're going to get your standard, of course, like rebels and bandits and things like that live outside the cities that are going to always cause some trouble. But the further away you get, I'll say the stranger things get. And so you're going to get far enough out that you're going to see some like mega flora, mega fauna, so some animals that have changed in huge ways because of this event. And a big part of why it's changed, and you'll see a little bit of this in the book, is that when the sun exploded, the moon also got hit and huge chunks of the moon landed on Earth. And so not only are they these sun shards, but there's these lunar shards out there as well. And for hand wavy reasons that we won't get into, the lunar shards have this sort of like some magical properties to them. And so that animals that go to them and get kind of like corrupted by the lunar shard start twisting and turning into very strange variations of them. And there's a cult out there that goes out there and worships these shards. And as a result, that's one of the main opposition forces that you have to deal with, is these people who are out there worshiping and using these rituals for the moon that are going to try and snuff out your sun shards. So that's one of the biggest forces that you're dealing with.
Oh, that's nice. I mean, it gives also some kind of a central figure in the opposite side, I would say, and also this kind of not just directly confrontation, but also strategies that the other faction will be doing. So the solar shards are what like define the cities, or so they are the central point of cities.
Yeah, so when we as humanity rebuilt after this apocalyptic event, we kind of gathered near these sun shards because they were sources of warmth and light, since the sun in the sky was largely destroyed. And as a result, cities were rebuilt around them, and technology was sort of developed to capture this sunlight. So it's almost like a Dyson sphere, the concept of a Dyson sphere that, you encircle a sun and capture all of its energy. You have a similar idea going on with these shards, so that we can just get this almost limitless power from these sun shards. And that makes them the sort of central focal point of our resettlement process.
Well, yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And the idea of having things like the weirder you go, the farther away as you go, the weirder they get. They also give that idea of kind of mega dungeon without being in a dungeon, because you are basically having some levels. Like the farther away, the more different and probably the more challenging they will get.
Yeah, exactly. And so when the GM is generating some missions for the Sparks to go on, they can use that as a sort of tool for deciding, the way I envision it, the way that I like to play, and so it'll be in the book, is that the GM will sort of generate a few missions and present them as options to the Sparks and say, like, this is the work that the city needs done today. Which of these do you want to do? And they will sort of inherently then have different rewards to them based off of how dangerous they are. And so as the players, they can kind of decide, okay, right now we just want to go take care of like a nearby mission, or just time sensitive wise. If we're sitting here at the table and we're like, we only have an hour, let's go do like something that's nearby. We know it's not going to be overly complicated. We can get it done in an hour's time. Or if maybe you have a little bit more time, you might want to try that further out, more dangerous mission. You go, hey, we got 2 hours. Let's try it. Let's investigate. Let's explore a little. Let's get into some more dangerous combat, and we'll go out further into the dusk and see what we can find.
Yeah, I very much like that idea that you can kind of trim and not just what you want to do by rewards, but also, okay, we have 1 hour to play. Let's do something that we can complete in 1 hour. So this mission will be one that we can go out, do it, come back, and that's done. And we had our fun and we had our epic combats.
Exactly. Like, sometimes you have a game night planned and then somebody cancels, and now you have some time and you want to fill that time with a few different options. Maybe you want to play some board games instead, but you want to use an hour to still role play. You have this option to do this lighter or shorter, easier mission, and then maybe go play a card game or something after that.
Yeah, I very much like that idea of having fast-paced, not only in the combat and the actions, but also that you can have a fast-paced session in general. So that's very interesting. We are almost up to our 30 minutes. So do you have anything else that you want to mention today?
Yeah, so the one other thing I want to mention is that it's now that it is June, there is a new event going on called the Lux Collective, which is it's going from June to August. I'm not in charge of it, but it's a Lumen-based event where folks who are making Lumen games and are putting them on itch for itch funding, so that sort of alternative crowdsourcing that we're seeing on itch. We are doing this sort of, it's like Zine Quest, but for Lumen games specifically. And so from June to August, there's this thing called the Lux Collective, where anybody who's making a Lumen game and wants to itch fund it can kind of join. And we're going to do a lot of promotional work together. We're going to try and lift each other up. We're going to try and get some streams and events going on. So if you've been interested in designing a game, Lumen, I think, is a good way to start. And if you've designed a game and you want to get cool art or something and you want to raise some money for it, the Lux Collective will hopefully help you get that promotion that you need to fund successfully for something like that.
Yeah, that is a very interesting initiative in a way, because this idea of having a central event based on, like, we had Troika Fest not that long ago, that was something like that. Mm-hmm. So this one focusing on Lumen, it's also a very good idea, so that people can work together to make it easier, because I mean, we are indie people, we do not have like a huge budget.
Right. We all, if we could lift each other up, I say we take those opportunities. And with the point of the Lux Collective is, if somebody buys a Lumen game and they go, oh cool, I really like this system, this will be sort of a central hub where they can see all of the other games that are using this system in all the totally different settings and genres, because everybody's taking it in a totally different direction, and they can go, oh neat, I like this system, let me try a Diablo-like game, or let me play this Borderlands style game. And as a result, you can kind of sample and see a lot of things and help people with their itch funding efforts at the same time.
That's very nice. I always love these kind of initiatives, that it also, as you said, makes it easier for the consumer to, okay, I like that idea, but let's see what else there are that are similar, so that I can tune it more to my taste. So it's very interesting. So I thank you very much for having you here. I will put the links for everything that we talked about in the description. They are all, as I always do. So as we mentioned, the Kickstarter for Nova will already be live when this video is going live. So check it out and go support. And thank you very much, Spencer, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a delight. I love it. It was a great way for me to start the day.
Thank you. So see ya. Thank you very much for your support and keeping up with us. Check my interview with Goblin Squire tomorrow morning, June 12th, on 10 a.m. BST, 11 a.m. CEST. We are talking about indie games, the links in the description, and let me know what you thought about the video. If you like the video, like the video, share, subscribe. You know how internet works. And also, you can support me in Ko-fi if you are liking the series. If you think that we need to improve something, let me know as well. And I have some games in itch.io. You can also check it out. And I'll see you all in my next video. So, see ya!